They kicked her out into the rain, pregnant and screaming. Her husband and her best friend laughed as they threw her belongings into the mud. But what they didn't know was that the silent cripple who begged by the church gate was watching everything. And he wasn't who they thought he was. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss stories of betrayal, justice, and unexpected miracles. Now, let's dive in. It was past midnight when the rain came down hard. The streets of Lagos were dark and empty except for one figure, a pregnant woman dragging a broken suitcase through the mud. Her name was Chinwe. Just hours ago, she had a home, a husband, and a future. Now she had nothing. Her husband Obina had thrown her out. And the worst part? The woman who helped him do it was Ifeoma, Chinwe's best friend since childhood, the same woman who used to braid her hair, who swore she'd always protect her, who held her hand at her wedding. That same woman was now sleeping in Chinwe's bed. Chinwe stumbled toward the only place she knew would be open at night, St. Michael's Church. The iron gate was locked, but the covered porch was dry. She collapsed there, her body shaking from cold and heartbreak. Her hands rested on her swollen belly. "I'm sorry, my baby," she whispered. "Mama has nothing to give you." From the shadows near the gate, someone was watching. A man in a wheelchair. He was covered in dirt and torn clothes. His face was rough, his beard long and tangled. People called him the mute beggar. He never spoke. He only sat by the church every day with a small cup in his lap. Most people ignored him. Some kicked dirt at him. Children threw stones. But he never said a word. His name was Daniel Obianjo. And 3 years ago, he was one of the richest men in Nigeria. He owned hotels, oil companies, and real estate. He had everything. Until the woman he loved, his fiancée Clara, ran away with his best friend and business partner. They didn't just take his heart. They tried to take his life. They staged an accident. His car went off a bridge. Daniel survived, but barely. His legs were crushed. The doctors said he'd never walk again. His family thought he was dead. The media reported it. Even his enemies celebrated. But Daniel didn't die. He disappeared. He chose to live like a beggar, silent and invisible, watching the world. He wanted to find out if kindness still existed, if real love was possible, if anyone would help a man who had nothing. For 3 years, he sat at that gate. Thousands of people passed him, pastors, businessmen, politicians, church members. Nobody stopped, nobody cared. Until tonight. The next morning, Chinwe woke to the sound of the church bell. Her body ached. Her dress was still wet. She stood slowly, holding her belly, and looked around. A small loaf of bread and a bottle of water sat beside her. She didn't know where it came from. She looked toward the gate and saw the beggar in his wheelchair. He was looking away, but she knew. It was him. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't turn. He didn't nod. He just sat there, silent as stone. Days passed. Chinwe had nowhere to go. She stayed by the church, sleeping on the porch at night. During the day, she tried to find work, but no one wanted a pregnant woman with no papers and no address. She was invisible to the world, except to the beggar. Every morning she found food waiting for her. Bread, fruit, water, sometimes rice wrapped in old newspaper. She never saw him bring it, but she knew it was him. One afternoon, she gathered courage and walked to his wheelchair. "You've been kind to me," she said softly. "Let me do something for you." She took the dirty rag near his chair and began cleaning his wheelchair. She wiped the rust, the dirt, the mud caked on the wheels. She poured water from her bottle and washed his hands gently. Tears rolled down her face. "You're the only one who saw me," she said. "Everyone else walked past like I was trash. But you shared what little you had." The man's eyes flickered. Something stirred in his chest. For 3 years, no one had touched him with kindness. No one had spoken to him like he mattered. And now, this broken woman, carrying a child with nothing to her name, was washing his wheelchair and calling him human. That day, something changed in Daniel. He had been testing the world. Now, the world had given him an answer. Kindness was rare, but it was real. 2 weeks later, a shiny black SUV pulled up near the church. A man in an expensive suit stepped out, flanked by 2 security guards. It was Obina, Chinwe's ex-husband. Beside him was Ifeoma, dressed in gold jewelry and a flowing gown. They were laughing, loud and proud. They walked straight toward Chinwe, who was sitting on the church steps holding a small bowl of rice. "Well, well, well," Obina said with a cruel smile. "Look at you. From my wife to a church rat." Ifeoma laughed. "I told you she'd end up in the gutter. She's useless." Chinwe's hands trembled, but she didn't look up. Obina leaned closer. "We came to show you something." He waved his hand toward the SUV. "That's my new car. Bought it last week. Ifeoma and I are getting married next month. A real wedding. Not like the cheap one I gave you." Ifeoma stepped forward and tossed a crumpled bill at Chinwe's feet. "Here, buy yourself something to eat. Maybe a mat to sleep on." The church members gathering for evening service watched in silence. Some shook their heads, others whispered, but no one stepped forward to defend her, except one. From his wheelchair near the gate, the beggar moved. Slowly, he wheeled himself toward them. Obina noticed and frowned. "What does this dirty cripple want?" he said with disgust. The beggar stopped in front of Chinwe. He reached into his torn shirt and pulled out a small folded handkerchief. Inside was money. Not much, just a few crumpled notes. But he placed it in her hand and closed her fingers around it. Then, for the first time in 3 years, he made a sound. A soft hum, like a lullaby. Ifeoma burst out laughing. "Oh my God, Chinwe, even beggars pity you now. This is too funny." Obina kicked the wheelchair lightly. "Move, old man. This doesn't concern you." The beggar didn't move. His eyes locked on Obina, cold, sharp, dangerous. For a moment, Obina felt a chill run down his spine, but he shook it off and grabbed Ifeoma's hand. "Let's go. This place stinks." They walked away, still laughing. Chinwe looked at the money in her hand and then at the beggar. Tears filled her eyes. "Why do you keep helping me?" she whispered. "You have nothing, and still you give." The beggar's lips moved slightly, but no words came. He turned his wheelchair and rolled back to his spot by the gate, but in his heart a plan was forming, a plan that would change everything. That night, Chinwe woke suddenly. Sharp pain shot through her belly. She gasped and clutched her stomach. The baby, it was coming. "Help," she whispered, but no one was around. The church was locked. The streets were empty. Panic flooded her chest. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. She collapsed on the cold concrete, crying out in pain. From the shadows, the beggar appeared. He wheeled himself toward her as fast as he could. His eyes were wide, his jaw tight. He reached her side and looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Then he did something no one expected. He stood up, slowly, shakily, but he stood. His legs trembled, his body swayed, but he didn't fall. He bent down, lifted Chinwe into his arms and carried her. Step by painful step, he walked toward the church gate. He banged on the iron bars with his fist again and again until the night guard came running. "Call an ambulance!" Daniel's voice rang out, deep and commanding. "Now!" The guard froze in shock. You can talk?" "I said now!" Daniel shouted. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived. Chinwe was rushed inside. Daniel climbed in after her, still holding her hand. At the hospital, doctors and nurses flooded the room. Chinwe gave birth to a healthy baby boy. When she opened her eyes and saw her son, she wept. But when she looked up, the beggar was gone. 7 days later, Chinwe sat in a small recovery room, holding her baby. The nurses had been kind. They said someone had already paid all her bills. She didn't know who. She didn't understand. Then the door opened. A man walked in. He was tall, clean-shaven, dressed in a sharp black suit. His eyes were calm, but powerful. Behind him stood 2 bodyguards. Chinwe stared. Her mouth fell open. "You," she whispered. My name is Daniel Obiancho," he said quietly. "I've been watching you, Chinwe. Not because I pitied you, but because I wanted to see if goodness still existed in this world. You gave me food when you were starving. You washed my chair when you had nothing. You treated me like a human being when everyone else saw trash." Her hands shook. "But you were a beggar?" "Yes, by choice. I lost everything 3 years ago. My wealth, my legs, my trust in people. So I tested the world. And you, Chinwe, you passed." He knelt beside her bed and took her hand. "I want to give you and your son a life, a real life. Marry me. Not because you need me, but because I need you. You reminded me what love looks like." Tears streamed down her face. "I don't understand. You don't have to. Just say yes." She looked at her baby, then at Daniel, And through her tears, she smiled. Yes. 3 months later, a grand wedding took place at the most expensive hotel in Lagos. Chinwe wore a dress that shimmered like the sun. Daniel stood beside her, no longer in a wheelchair, but on his own 2 feet. Doctors had performed surgery, months of therapy followed, and now he was walking again. The church that had sheltered them both was filled with guests, politicians, pastors, business people. And in the back row, 2 uninvited guests sat nervously, Obina and Ifeoma. They had heard rumors. They came to see if it was true. When they saw Chinwe walk down the aisle, radiant and glowing, Ifeoma's jaw dropped. That's the beggar," she stammered. Obina's face went pale. "That's Daniel Obianjo, the oil tycoon. He's supposed to be dead." As the ceremony ended, Daniel's security escorted them out. Obina tried to speak, tried to beg, but Daniel only looked at him once. "You had a queen," Daniel said coldly, "and you threw her in the mud. Now watch her wear a crown." The doors closed. Obina and Ifeoma were left outside in the heat, watching through the glass as Chinwe and Daniel celebrated with hundreds of guests. Years later, Chinwe and Daniel built schools, hospitals, and shelters for the homeless. Their son grew strong and kind. And every year, on the anniversary of the night Chinwe gave birth, they returned to St. Michael's Church. They sat on the same steps where they first met, and they thanked God for the rain that brought them together. Because when the world rejected her, a silent beggar saw her worth. And when everyone walked past him, a broken woman saw his heart. The moral: when you humiliate the weak, you never know who God has placed beside you to test your soul. Kindness is not weakness, it is the exam not everyone passes, and those who pass it inherit blessings beyond measure.